This episode is brought to you by Midwest Night Watchers, found everywhere on your favorite podcast platforms.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Piercing the Veil.
Hey, welcome in. It's good to see everyone.
Got people jumping in chat already and showing up.
That's awesome. I see Lulu and Gary and Roger, Jason, Moon at Noon. Welcome in, everyone.
Yeah, glad you guys all made it. We changed up the time a little bit because daylight savings time's coming up. It's going to start getting dark and we have animals to put up. So we're not really sure if we're going to stick with 4 p.m. or not. We might go back to 6 p.m. But our normal show is usually 6 p.m. But we're just testing out this time slot just to see how it goes. And I don't know. I kind of like the 6 p.m., I guess. I don't know.
We'll figure it out. Well, welcome in, everyone. We just thought we'd have some fun tonight and talk about heaven and near-death experiences and just some wonderful positive vibes tonight.
Yeah. I mean, now that we got Halloween approaching us and we'll have enough scary stories to come. So we thought we'd venture the other side a little bit and the enlightened side and have a little uplift before the creepy stuff starts coming in. So tonight we have Lynn Monet, as you guys all know. She's been on our show before, great guest, and we always talk about either near-death experiences or stuff that people experience on the other side, and all kinds of neat stories and experiences going on that we love to talk about, and it gives us a chance to pierce the veil, like our show is named, and we get a chance to see a little peek here and there of what other people have experienced and what they see, whether it's sounds, colors, or loved ones. We just love hearing the loved one stories. So I'm sure we'll touch on that tonight and this fascinating subject.
Yes, it is.
So it looks like we have Elaine popping in and Roger and Lulu's here, Ida.
And Pixie,
Laura, thanks for coming. So if you have any questions for Lynn or anything that you want us to bring up, please put it in all capitals so we can tell that it's a question for our guest or just let us know somehow and we'll try to bring it up and address it. Other than that, we'll just get right into it with Lynn and bring her up and get going.
All right.
Hi,
Lynn.
everybody.
Hi.
Hi, Daryl. Hi, Jane. Hi, everybody.
Welcome back.
Thank you for coming. Hey, you guys, don't forget to check out their new store. Daryl and Jane, didn't you advertise that you've got a new store?
Yeah.
We have a store on Mind Tracks Apparel.
There you go.
Mindwear Apparel.
Mindwear Apparel.
And we're getting ready to update it again. We're going to put some long sleeve shirts and some heavier shirts for winter and fall. So we got some new stuff and we got a hat we're going to add for Chiro sounds. And
so give it a couple of days and we should have some new products on there for people to order.
There you go. You see, you guys got to be sure to check out their store. Don't forget to give this a thumbs way up and subscribe, and to hit the notification bell for the algorithm so that we can make the show rock.
All right.
All is good. Yeah, we got to get those up so that I can start giving out some freebies on their show, and and they can start receiving some donations for those freebies. So I'm looking forward to doing that for them as soon as we get all of the algorithms and all of this new stuff they're throwing out for us to do. But anyway, I am so happy to be here. Thank you so very much for reaching out to me and inviting me to be on your wonderful show.
Oh, thank you for coming. We enjoy having you.
Yeah, we just love your stories.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure to be here. I really have some beautiful ones. As most people know, you've heard the story about how I grew up behind a hospital and how I've been able to see things since I was like 5 years old. And I wanted to ask too, how long are we on tonight so that I know where I need to abbreviate it a little if need be?
Oh, probably an hour and a half.
Good. That works for me.
Unless you feel like going longer, but usually an hour and a half, hour and 20 minutes.
Okay, that sounds good. I can go as long as you need me to go. So, but I did write a book called The Colors of Heaven, Beginnings Never End. And the reason why I wrote this book was to help take the stigma of death and dying away. There's such a finality and such a stigma to death that it traumatizes people so badly that are left behind here with the loss and the grieving. And the thing is that we don't die. We simply shed our skin and go. And I know it's not the same as having the person right there next to you, but they're actually around you more often than they probably were when they were alive. And this is not the last time that you're going to see them. They are on an amazing vacation that you will soon join them on with wonderful, wonderful things. And if you could kind of try to look at it that way and understand that this is not the last time that you will see them. You will see them again. It's just a gap of time that kind of passes, that will actually pass quite quickly before you're connected again. And they can also still connect with you, communicate with you if you're open to that. I can give you some little tips on things to do with that. And also that they can still hear you. When you cross over at the time of death, you have the opportunity to choose either to cross over or not. And I just wanted to mention too that with the paranormal, as there's a dark side, there's a light side, and this is the white and light side. But as I was saying, you have the opportunity to choose, as in life, you have freedom of choice whether you want to choose to cross over or not. And some people choose not to cross over. And a lot of times that's because they don't feel worthy, maybe based on traditional religion and the values that they were taught with that. They don't feel worthy, or they're afraid to cross over because of maybe some behavior that they did. There are other people that kind of get lost in the mix, where maybe they're caring for a person. Maybe there's a husband caring for a wife that's been ailing for years, and then all of a sudden, he expects her to pass first, but then he passes. But yet he'll still linger to be around her, or the dog or the child or whoever it is that they're kind of watching over. And then when that being crosses over, the person that originally crossed over gets stuck here. So they kind of lose their way. And those are easily crossed over. And and then of course they're the ones that are little tricksters that do choose to stay behind. And those are usually the ones that are haunting places and haunting your houses and waking you up and shaking your bed in the middle of the night. And and they do that sort of thing too. And they manipulate the dimensions and use portals, just like demons and aliens and Bigfoot and all of those otherworldly creatures that have learned how to manipulate the dimensions, the portals between the dimensions, so that they can go in and out. But I wanted to say that I've been a nurse for 40 years. I'm going to be 62 in May, people. So I think I have every line on my face that I've earned it. And but 17 of that has been in end of life care, and I've seen some amazingly beautiful things occur close to that time that I would love to share with you all tonight. You better get the tissues out, because you will have happy tears. A lot of your questions about the other side will be answered, like about food is one. Everybody is, well, I wonder what they do if they eat food on the other side. No, They don't, but because they have these abilities, their mental, their mind, because they're thinking more from their heart, I should say, instead of their mind, it's even more powerful. So, and we'll talk about that too. That's another big thing, about how your heart has 50,000 times more memory than your brain does, and people don't realize that. But my mother comes and goes every once in a while, and I asked her one time. I said, "Mom," I said, don't you ever miss the taste of potato salad or those barbecued ribs or brownies that you used to make?" And she's like, "Well, we don't eat here." She comes through like a megaphone. And I said, "Well, yeah, I know that." And I said, she said, "But we do everything by thought." She said, "So if we want to be with someone, we think of them, or we can pick up on their thoughts, and we're also there, because where your energy goes, where your thoughts go, your energy flows." So they pick up on that as well. And she said, and like if they want to go someplace and be somewhere, Niagara Falls or Italy or something, all they have to do is think of it, or another planet, and they're there. And she said, so when it comes to food, that all you have to do is think about it, and the flavor and sensation comes to you as if you are eating it. So I thought, isn't that a wonderful thing? With Ben and Jerry's, man, you could have as much as you want and not have to worry about the calories.
Yeah.
But if you think of it, a lot of times people argue the fact about the sense that they do have all of their senses on the other side, and that the smell one's been a topic of debate. But it's not smell like with an olfactory nerve that we have physically to give us that sensation, that ability to smell. It is a memory recall. And anybody that has smelled an apple pie baking, or the ocean, the salt water from the ocean, if you focus on it for just a minute in that moment, you can almost smell that apple pie baking, and you can smell the salt of the ocean, even though you're not there. And when you're on the other side, it's like on steroids. So they get it as if they're there. So, and I thought that was a wonderful thing. But I worked in end of life care for 17 years, and I saw some very, very beautiful things. I also had a period of time where I went back to school to further my degree in mental facilities. That I'm only bringing this part up because of the way that big pharma, which I'll be careful how I say this, because I don't want FluffTube to give us any tickets. No speeding tickets today. But because the humans are so ready to run with the medication. If somebody's not acting like everybody else, there's something wrong with them, and they have to have a pill. And then they have to have a pill to counteract the negative, what do they call it? The side effects of the pill that they're taking. And then next thing you know, they're taking 10 pills and they're still having the problems. They're not solving the problems. They're band-aiding them, and it's not working.
Exactly.
So they do this with mental illness. They also do this with people who are seeing their parents and loved ones coming in at the end of life. And sometimes this even happens as much as a year ahead of time. And I'll go into the mental part of it at another time. Unless somebody has questions tonight, I'll be happy to answer those, because each one deserves kind of a focus on its own, because there's a lot of detail to it that is interesting. But if you would like me to share some of those stories that I experienced as a nurse in the hospitals and in the place that I worked for 10 years, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. Brian has a question that he asked right away, and I don't know if it's something you were going to touch on or not, but he's wondering about soul traps or reincarnation recycling.
We do reincarnate. However, there are incarnates and people that reincarnate, and there's a difference with that. The people that reincarnate, when they leave their body, if they choose to cross over, they go through their life review. They go, and again, let me back up a little bit. There are three kinds of death. There is a near-death experience. There is self-inflicted, like a death that, like a suicide or something, self-inflicted, that is considered a, what is the wording I'm looking for? It's a sudden death. So it would be near-death experience, sudden death, and natural death. And natural death is what most of us have. So I'm going to kind of focus on that one because there are differences with each one than the way that they're handled on the other side. So for the most part, we have a beautiful reception. It's usually family that comes in first, unless you're more comfortable with your pets, then it'll be the other way around. And each one kind of gets its own reception to itself because, if you have your animals and all of the people coming up too, everything just gets kind of mixed in there. So you kind of get to have a second reception with your pets if you have them with the humans first and the other way around. And people, don't be surprised if you're expecting a German Shepherd and you have an ostrich and a white elephant come bounding up to you. You might even have a T-Rex, because it's not just the pets from this lifetime that you will meet with. It's ones that you've had from every lifetime that you've had. And you may have had a pet elephant or a camel or something. So don't be surprised if the ground starts bounding that you're on and you're shaking and all of a sudden this big thing comes to give you a big hug because it was your special baby in another lifetime. So from there, they go into a life review, which is like this big panoramic theater with the dome and everything. It's a big, and you get to review your life and you are shown. Also, there's the Akashic records, however you say it, pecan, depending on where you come from. Is it like a hallway, and it's got these cubbies in it, and some of the cubbies are covered and some of them are opened, and the ones that are covered are your missed opportunities. So you will see where you had other opportunities that you chose not to take and the ones that you did. But also you'll focus in on I want to say this, nobody's judged. You judge yourself, which is interesting because really, if you think about it, it would be more effective to judge yourself. If you had somebody, God standing there or source or whatever you want to call whoever, wherever you go to, we all actually do go to the same place, which as I get into the story, it talks about aliens and how some of them are also very much so on the other side, and everything is connected. Everybody's right. So nobody's wrong here, but it brings it all together because I've seen both over there.
Oh.
But what was I saying? Before that, what was I just lost my track of mine. I'm sorry. What was I saying before that?
You said we were going down the hallway with missed opportunities.
Yes. I'm sorry. I've got these kittens that are a little distracting me that over here that I'd mentioned to you before the show. They're kind of running around my feet and I'm trying to lift them up. Did I lose you?
No.
Okay,
Nope.
Good. All right. My phone was just starting to ring. We go down this hallway and it's got the missed opportunities. But the thing about people that have reincarnated is that they come here for lessons. And after they go through this review of which they judge themselves, and in that being said, you slugged Johnny in the eye and ended up making him lose sight in his vision in his eye. And this is what happened to him in his life. And you're made to feel all of what you created by that one action. If somebody's standing there saying, well, you did this, you're going to be rationalizing. Well, he spit at me first. You know what I mean? Type thing. Right. But if you are judging yourself and you are placed in that position that you are reviewing your life yourself and you're feeling what your actions caused, you have to own it. So that's where it's different. And again, you're not judged. You then go through a period of schooling. There's this beautiful, beautiful buildings. They look like alabaster. They're kind of opalescent that you can kind of go in through. And a lot of the roofs, there aren't really roofs. You kind of come in through. The light kind of comes through the walls. They're beautiful, beautiful classrooms there that you go to learn how to make better decisions in your life, or how to deal with addiction, or how to deal with your anger issues, or some of the behaviors that you did that were not exactly the direction that you had chosen to go in when you first came into this lifetime. Because the thing is before we come in on this lifetime, we're like, oh yeah, I'll come in and do that. I'll come in and take one for the team. But then you get here and life is not like it is on the other side. And a lot of times you don't accomplish very much here because you can't. You don't realize that there are creepy things that will attach on you and try to derail you from where you're going, and all sorts of things like that. And that there's disease and stuff like that. Even if you pick it for yourself, you don't fully, you're in this perfect realm, where you're just like, oh yeah, I'll take that on too. Give me that one, give me this one. And then, like I said, you get here and then you're floundering in most cases. This is not a fun place to be. It is like school. And, and there's a lot of people, take on a lot more than most. And it's hard. It's hard. But
It's not easy.
No, it's not. They do go through this review, and then they are, heaven kind of turns into, the best way that I can describe it is kind of like an airport with terminals. So then you're off onto your next venture of whatever it is to then go through and try to complete what you needed to complete. And the people that are reincarnating have karmic things that they need to fix and to redo. Then there are the incarnates, which are most of us. If you're watching this show, you're probably an incarnate. I know that Daryl and Jane are. I know that I am. We are the light bearers and the light anchors. We're also the bridges to those lights that volunteered to come here. And how that works is that we volunteer. There's a whole group of us that volunteer. Then we're chosen out of that group. And then out of the group that was chosen, we volunteer again. Out of that for certain things like that. And so there's like a 3-step process that goes through for picking people to come here. And when we come here and we cross over after we have completed our lifetime, we also have the reception. And again, this is a natural death, so it's different than the other two that I had mentioned. And once you have your review and you have your, of course, you meet with everybody, and then you have your life review. You go through more of a debriefing instead of taking classes, because once you have gotten to the point that you can incarnate, you have a choice to come here or not. You don't have to come here. You've already met so many of your things that you really don't have to come back here unless you choose to. And so, yes, people, with all of this crazy chaos that's going on, we all chose to be here. We volunteered to be here. And I know that most of us are probably stepping on our own toes saying, why did we do that? Because it's nuts right now. Mm-hmm. But we will know when the time comes what our position, what our job is to do. And there is some times of change that are coming that people, they'll just know. And they'll kick in and do their job, do what they know they're supposed to do. But we are the light anchors and the light bearers. That's why Daryl and Jane have this beautiful show to bring information to people that they may be seeking to help them. And again, this is not the 101 class, people. This is the advanced class. So if there's anybody in here listening that, like, oh man, those people are crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is not the class for you. If that's it. We still plant seeds, so to speak, and that when things start to happen, and we'll be the first ones that you come to with questions, but this is for the advanced class. These are for people that already know that there's aliens, that there's Bigfoot, that there's, an afterlife, that there are attachments and demons and all kinds of Mothman. I mean, all of that exists. So we're not trying to convince people. We're just moving forward. And it's really, really nice that you have a platform that people can come and join in and talk about these things, because it's so important. So, but yeah, I'll be happy to get on with my stories if you'd like me to, unless somebody's got a question about anything that I've mentioned so far.
Well, we already talked about it. Elaine or OGG asked about who comes to collect you when you cross over. We've kind of talked about you said pets and could be loved ones, whichever way it turns out, whoever comes first.
Yes. And the thing is I saw my mother when she passed away, and I'll be happy to tell that story if you'd like, because it kind of brings the alien with the human together. It also brings together what all, kind of happens with that and what I saw. Even if there are no physically embodied people in the room at the time that someone passes, they are never, ever alone. They always have a huge group of beautiful people and angels and these beings that look like they're from somewhere else, but they're magnificent. They're just gorgeous, and they're all positive energy and that sort of thing. I guess explaining the way that my mom passed away would be the best way to do that, if you'd like me to share that with you.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. My mom had cancer. She had been treated for cancer and decided, because she had so many other comorbidities, not to go through treatment anymore. She'd had enough. So we checked off her bucket list for a year, and she ate her favorite lasagna every week, and went around and got to go camping for the first time in her 70s and enjoyed that. But so when it finally came time for her to pass, the day before, and the thing about people that are getting ready to pass, a lot of times they know. You'll hear them talking about, oh, well, I'm going to go home and see Jesus tomorrow, if that's or I'm going home to the other place tomorrow. Or they might even say something to a friend like, my cat so-and-so, if something happens to me, will you please make sure that my daughter takes my cat? And everybody's like, oh,
Right.
no, don't talk like that. But then all of a sudden the next day the person's gone.
Yeah.
So they do kind of know that. And a lot of times too, it's very common for them to start seeing loved ones coming in, even like I said before, a year in advance. In my mother's case, she was going around the hospice facility that she was in, telling people goodbye, telling them that she was going home tomorrow. And she even told one lady that's dog had just been put down 3 days earlier that she would find the woman's dog on the other side and take care of it for her until the woman came herself to retrieve the dog. And lo and behold, my mother did. She passed away around lunchtime, a little after lunchtime, 1:30 something, the very, very next day. And the thing about people is that sometimes they will leave early. Their spirit will leave early, and they just leave their physical body there to finish. And sometimes they'll stay until the last minute. My mother stayed until the last minute. She wanted to be there to hear everything before she crossed over. And even though she could no longer verbalize or even open her eyes, she would move her eyebrows up and down and try to mouth words, and it was appropriate. People would come in and they would say, "Hi, Phyllis," and she would go in response. So she wasn't just doing it randomly. And as my mother got closer to her time of transition, I was the only one in the room with her. My brother was trying to get there, but wasn't able to make it in time. And I think that there was a reason for that, because I was able to join in on so much of what happens with death and dying that I had heard stories of as a nurse, but this was validated because I actually saw it. I do have the gift of second sight. And so my mom was sitting in her bed, and she had her head propped up to help her breathe easier. And I'm sitting there, and I'm just, holding her hand and stroking her hand. And I noticed that the other side of the room, opposite of the bed, that the whole wall starts misting. This ectoplasmic portal, which is the misting, filled the room, roof to ceiling. Yeah, I mean, ceiling to floor and side to side. And I could see movement on the other side. And sometimes I'd see a shoulder stick out or a pant leg stick out. And yes, people, they do show up in clothes. Nobody wants to see mom naked when you cross over and mom comes to collect you, to help you, or your friends come to collect you and then walk you over. If they're naked, you're going to all be like, "Oh, please, TMI, please get some clothes on." So they do show up in clothes, and they usually show up the way that you remember seeing them last, healthy. So and I say that because if someone has deteriorated significantly from cancer and they're now like 70 pounds, a bag of bones when they pass, and that's the last way you remember them, that's not the way they're going to come to you when you have your time to transition over to meet you there. And in that misting, I noticed that towards the head of my mom's bed, it started to efface, and it kind of made this arched area that opened. And my grandmother, my mother's mother, we called her Grandma Girl, stepped in to the room, and she looked the exact same as I remember seeing her. She had her little 80s curly perm and a leisure suit that she had made for herself that she had. She even presented with her eyeglasses. So she looked the same as I had remembered seeing her last. And she approached my mother's bed, and my mother, of course, sitting there slanted. My grandmother started to stroke the inside of my mom's arm, and she leaned forward and said something in my mother's ear. And my mother started to respond with her facial expressions, because when a person is in that state of transition, the filters efface, and they're able to hear the telepathy and the communication from the spirit world, as well as the speech of the physical world of people talking in the room. So my grandmother did this 3 different times, and each time my mother was responding with the eyebrows, and again it was appropriate, because as my grandmother would stand back up, my mom would respond, and then she'd stop, and then my grandmother would lean forward again and say something else, and then as she's coming away, my mom would be responding. So she was hearing her mother speaking. And I see this frantic wave behind my grandmother's head, and it was my sister's perfume filled the room. This still brings tears to my eyes. My beautiful baby sister Robin was murdered by a jealous boyfriend, Baptist minister's son, when she was 20, and she was frantically waving behind my grandmother in the doorway, and I could see her and I could smell her. She wore an unusual perfume called Latisse in the 80s, and it just filled the room. And she actually came around from the misting and came over to me and embraced me, and I could feel her long hair falling over my face. I could feel the gentle brushing of her and just her essence. I could feel her and smell her perfume. And when she went to go back around into the group of people, the whole wall had effaced. So all of the misting was gone, and I was able to look directly into the other side. And people, they've got colors there. My favorite color is on the other side. You would need 10 color wheels to even be able to imagine the beautiful colors. There's no way to describe them at all. Also, the lighting on the other side, it seems to emit from within the atmosphere itself. There's not like a light, like a sunshine or anything, and it's not glarish. And I remember seeing in the background where there's all these people. Some people I recognized that had passed, cousins and aunts and uncles or great grandmother. I recognized them. There were people there that I didn't recognize, but of course my mother knew them once she crossed over. She knew exactly who they were. And I see this beautiful tree in the background, and there's this table with kind of like this white flowing cloth on it. But of course there's no food, which is where the food question came up that I mentioned to you before at a later time with my mom. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, no wonder you don't have to. You can just stand at the table and pretend like you're eating potato salad and get it. So anyway, so my sister, when she went back, I said to my mom, I kissed her cheek. I said, Mom, Grandma and Robin are here. They're ready to take you home. And of course she responded, and she moved her eyebrows up and down. And I told her, I said, I'm going to be fine. I will see you again soon. She and I had also made a pact, which I'll be happy to share, which is some things that some people can do to get that reassurance that their loved one is actually there with them at a certain time. So please remind me to give that one out, because it'll help a lot of people. But we had already made a pact, my mother and I, and I will share that after this part. So my mother's laying there, and she mouthed to me, and literally 10 minutes later, she took her last breath. In the meantime, I'm sitting here and I'm watching all of these people, and I notice that towards the head of my mother's bed, there's this group of loved ones huddled like in a football huddle. And when they stood up in a way, my mother's spirit was in the center, almost as if they were stabilizing her spiritual feet. And the way that I see spirits is that I can see them as clear as I can see you. I can tell you their hair color, their eye color, if they're close enough out of my peripheral vision. I can see what they have on, everything. When they're in front of me, they look more opaque, like the reflection, like your own reflection would look in a plate glass window, like going into Penny's in the daylight. You see your reflection walking up to the door, but it's kind of opaque looking. They kind of look like that. And if they're closer up to me, I can see sometimes an upper half or a lower half, but I see this waffling to the air that looks like gas fumes or heat vapors coming off of a road type thing, that waffling to the air. And I'm sure a lot of people have recognized that as well, because the thing about us is that we're all energy. And of course, if you want to take it from a scientific level, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just changes form. So that energy is still, that waffling is still there within the air. So after my mom was standing there, everyone started to come up and greet her, and she was grinning from ear to ear. And the love and the elation that was coming from the other side. And like I said, it makes me emotional because there are no words that can describe it, and there's no feeling that can touch it. It's just something that you miss, that you didn't realize that you were missing until you got to touch in with it again, if that even makes sense, because it's almost like home. You want to go home. And I mean, and in that moment, and I'm looking at my mother, and she's so happy and she's beautiful. She's standing there and she's greeting everyone. And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to come over for the day too. I've got to come back and go take care of my kids, but I'd love to come in and be a part of it, which of course, you can't do. But the room started to thin out after a little while. As people would greet, they'd go off and they'd do whatever else that they were doing. And my mom, when it came, I'm looking at, actually, I have to back up to this part. I forgot this part. So I'm sitting there smiling. I'm sitting in this elation. You can't help but smile. And I'm thinking to myself, I look over and I notice that my mom is no longer breathing. Her physical body is no longer breathing. And I think to myself, I'm like, oh my God, I better call the nurse, because if the nurse comes walking in, my mother has just stopped breathing and I'm sitting here grinning from ear to ear. That's not a normal response. They might think I did something to her, It's kind of creepy. So I called the nurse. The nurse came in and pronounced that she was dead. And she walked through the festivities. The spiritual festivities were still going on. They didn't even seem to be bothered by the nurse coming in. And I asked the nurse, I said, can I, stay here for a little while with my mom? Because I wanted to see what else was going to happen, because I'm still watching all of my mother. She's standing there greeting people and stuff like that. And the nurse said that I could. So this whole thing went on for like 20 minutes, our time. There is no time on the other side. It is timeless, but we're linear. So we have minutes and hours and all of that kind of thing. And if you had to try to compare something, and I wrote this in my book, even though there is no time, to try to give people an idea of what concept of time is over there. One of their days is like 25 of our years. So when we come into this lifetime, it's only like we've been gone for 3 or 4 days to them. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, did you go to the, taking a run to the grocery store and coming back. It's no big deal. You know what I'm saying? So, but really there is no time there. But I had to kind of put it into something a little bit more, logical that way. And so they start thinning out, and I'm noticing all of a sudden they're getting ready to walk out past me. And I recognized my mother in her gown. My mother had beautiful feet and legs, and I noticed she's still in her patient gown, and I could see her shapely legs. And of course, the upper part was the waffling. And they walked right past me and kind of connected in. But what I did notice is there were these other beings that were there. There were angels, but there were the other beings that were there that appeared to be from somewhere else. They were very, very tall. They had white luminous hair. Maybe it was just the light that was emitting from their head and from their head area. They were so tall. There were 10-foot ceilings in this room, and their heads were like getting the top part of it. It came up to like here on them. So they were very, very tall. And the thing about it is I don't know if they were male or female. It doesn't matter. They were just gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. They were walking with the angels as my mother was also being escorted out by my grandmother and my younger sister. And it made me realize in that moment, and the message just kind of came over, that with as many stars as there are in the sky that are also sunshines for other solar systems and galaxies and other places, it would be ignorant on our part to think that we are the only species that there is in all of those millions of possible places, that there are probably even places like the planet Earth in some of those solar systems that have beings that live there. And when those beings complete their lifetimes, they also have to have somewhere else to go. So they finish and they go there too. I'm not talking about the bug looking things and then the creepy stuff. They go somewhere too, but it's not at that level where we go, and where these other beautiful higher conscious beings were also presenting. So when people talk about, the aliens and the humans, everybody's right. I mean, it all comes together there. And as I said, when you incarnate, or when you reincarnate, you're recycled back in. Doesn't necessarily have to be Earth. And with the way that Earth is changing, most of the people that have to be recycled back in will go somewhere else, because the energetic level of the Earth is rising right now, and the collective consciousness, the people and the awareness is also, you're going to have to be of a higher level of consciousness to be able to be on the Earth in coming decades, for that matter. And and as a matter of fact, the new children that are being born in after December, like the middle of December on, are specifically made with extra special things that will shift to be able to transition into the new Earth that we'll be living on during their lifetime. So anyway, I wanted to try to explain it that way. As a nurse, I've got hundreds of stories of people, because I was end of life care, and I'm also I've completed my death doula course. I'm licensed certified death doula, which is a death midwife. As midwife brings in babies, I take people out. So I help them out.
Right.
I've seen a lot of beautiful things with that too, and I'll be more than happy to share some of those with you if you'd like.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Just for a second, I wanted to let you know that you have sunlight coming through blinds, and it's on your face once in a while. I didn't know if it was.
I'll lean forward.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah, I just want to let you know you're good.
Yeah, I don't need any extra lines. Yeah. Well, because the sun's still kind of coming in, I guess it's where I've got them angled. And I sit in my kitchen all the time because I have to prop my feet up, because for one thing, for the little feral kittens, so that they don't get me. But I had surgery on one foot, and I just got used to being in here because I still have to prop up my foot once in a while. But anyway, about the stories in the hospital. A lot of times people, because of their discomfort with death and the person transitioning, if mom or dad starts talking about seeing dead people in the room, everybody freaks out. They run and get the nurse. They want to get the meds to shut them up because, they're hallucinating, or they think so, and they're not. And I have some stories that bring this home. There's one in particular that some people have probably heard on other shows, but I love to tell this one because there's no way to dispute this at all, because my client was blind. She was totally blind. She had been blind for 10 years, couldn't see shadows, nothing, totally, totally blind. And she had only been on my unit for about 2 weeks. So I didn't know her that well, but her son and daughter come to the nurse's station and they say, "Mom's talking to people in the room that aren't there." And I kind of expected it, because this is common. I expected it, that the loved ones are starting to open the way and help them get comfortable with the transitioning over. So as more of a comfort measure for the son and the daughter, I said, well, let me walk with you down to your mama's room and check on her and see if she's comfortable and if she needs anything, and I'll be happy to reposition her, do whatever she needs to have done at that time. And when we walked into the room, she was sitting at a slant. They were always sitting at a slant because it's easier for them to breathe. And she had her oxygen on, and she was smiling, and she was reaching into the sky, and she was as if she was being given something very fragile, like snowflakes, because she was being so delicate with what she was reaching for. She was very happy with it. I mean, she was smiling from ear to ear, just very happy with what she was receiving. And I said to her, I said, "Edna, who's here?" And she said, "George." And her daughter, and her daughter turned as white as a sheet. She had to sit down, and she said, "Well, George is my father." She said, "And my father passed away X amount of years ago." And all of a sudden, Edna then pipes up and she says, "And he's glad that you're taking good care of Pixie." Well, Pixie was Edna's poodle. When George passed away, Pixie had to be taken by the son to take care of, because Edna could not care for the dog being blind anymore. And Pixie was an elderly dog now, but still very much alive. And of course, the son told me the story about that. And he said to me, "Do you think my mom's hallucinating?" And of course, in a professional setting, I can't just come out and say, no, I think your dad's here. And I think his spirit and other spirits are getting your mama ready, for time. And it would be nice if you could talk to them, because you can actually communicate with them through the person that's transitioning, who can hear the telepathy and respond with the answers for you. And a lot of people miss that in their grief and their fear of having a dead person in the room. So I turned it around, because professionally I couldn't come out and say, no, I think your father's here. And I said, well, do you think she's hallucinating? And he said, well, I don't know. And I said, do you mind if I try something? I said, I'm not trying to change your belief system. However, it's been my experience that loved ones do come forward to help the person transition over. And he shook his head, yes. And I said, Edna, can I ask George a question? And she nodded her head, yes. And I said, George, what color is your son's shirt? And Edna said, yellow. Now, Edna can't see anything. So George had to tell her what color the shirt was. So in that moment, the son got it. And he said, hi, Dad. He realized that his father had to be there. And because he was wearing a yellow Ralph Lauren short sleeve polo shirt.
Wow.
And it was right. And I mean, to me, as a medical professional, how can a blind person hallucinate? They can't.
Right.
They can't see anything. It's impossible. So it really, really added validity to so many other things that I had experienced. And I've got so many stories, including people with Alzheimer's, some beautiful, beautiful things, babies that hadn't been born that were coming in, and just so many things. And I'd be happy to share more of those with you if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I had a patient named Abigail that I call Abigail in my book, and she was this precious, precious lady. She and her husband had come to the facility looking for medical care for him, because there were 3 different levels. I, of course, was on the skilled unit, and her husband's health was failing. So they came. They didn't have children. They were both only children of their parents. So they didn't have like a lot of relatives or anything to reach out to. And so they came to where I was working, and Abigail slipped and fell and fractured her hip. So she ended up on my unit, and she had been there for several weeks. So we got to know each other, and we built a rapport. And there was one day that I came in. I was working a Baylor shift on the weekends. So I worked from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. as a single mom, so I could be home Monday through Friday with my kids and a soccer mom on Saturday. And she said to me, she said, Lynn, do you think that I'm crazy? And I started to tease her a little bit. I didn't think she was serious. And I said, define crazy. I was teasing her. And she says, no, I mean like crazy, crazy. And I said, well, no, of course not. Why would you say something like that? And she said, well, I see my parents. She said, I know that they're both gone. They've been gone for many years, but I see my parents and it makes me happy. She said, and now they're going to put me on medication because they say that I'm hallucinating, and I don't want to take the medication and have my ability to see my parents be taken away.
Right.
And I told her, I said, well, 2 things. I said, one thing, this evening, I heard that tomorrow morning you're being discharged back home to your apartment. Said, and the second thing is as your advocate and your nurse, you don't have to take this medication. You can refuse. You have the right to refuse. As long as you are of sound mind. I said, you have the right to refuse, and also you're going home. So you can kind of do whatever you want when you get home. I recommend following the doctor's order because I have to medically, but if there's a pill in there that you don't, then that's up to you what you do in the privacy of your own home. So she was happy with that. She did get discharged the next day, but about 6 or 8 months later, she ended back up on my unit. It just so happened that she had a serious illness that was undetected, and it was kind of moving very quickly. And so she was on my unit, and she started to talk about, in addition to seeing her parents, she was seeing this woman with this little girl that would come to her room and visit her. And the problem is that they were so real to her that Abigail was taking cookies and cake back from the dining room after dinner to her room to give to be the hostess, to give to the little girl and the mother that would come to visit. And of course, this was creating a bug problem in her room. So we had to stop letting her, making sure that she wasn't hiding them in her purse and stuff to take down to her room. But there was one day that a friend of mine needed to have a day shift covered. And so I volunteered to work it for her. And so I'm working a day shift. And Abigail has now come back from lunch, and she's sitting in her recliner in her room. And the way she had a recliner off in the corner, and there was this big picture window with the air conditioner underneath it, like the American hotels have for anybody that's not in the United States. It's watching those big things underneath. And she was leaning forward in her chair, and I'm coming down the hallway with my treatment cart to start treatments on people. And I passed by her room, and I noticed her sitting in her recliner. She's leaning forward. She's got this piece of yellow butterscotch wrapped candy, and she's leaning forward. And anybody else that would have passed by it would have looked like she was trying to feed it to the air conditioner. Mm-hmm. But she was talking to this woman and this little girl that was standing in front of her. She was offering the piece of candy to the little girl. And the woman that stood there, she had very, very long black hair, parted down the middle. She had on a white peasant type blouse, a denim skirt that came longer down to her ankles. The little girl also had the very black straight hair with bangs. She had on a little blue dress with a pinafore, little Mary Jane shoes, very, very cute, very beautiful little girl. And I remember passing by, and I thought, oh, wow, Abigail's got company today. That's wonderful that she's got some people to come in and visit with her. And then I take about 3 or 4 steps, and it hits me. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I don't remember those people signing in at the nurse's desk. And I had been sitting there charting for a while everybody was eating. And I'm like, well, and we have to have a head count of all the souls in the building, just in case there's an emergency, so that the fire department has to come. They know how many people to get out.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I step back, I knock on her door frame, her door's open. She invites me in, and I walk into her room, and there's nobody there but her. And I see right next to me, I see this waffling, energetic, like right here, this waffling in the air. So I knew that the spirits that I had seen out of my peripheral vision passing by of the young woman and the little girl were still there. Abigail says to me, she says, I want you to meet my friends. She says, isn't the little girl beautiful? And I said, yes, she is. Abigail comes forward in her chair. Her eyes get huge like a deer in headlights. And she says, can you see them? Yeah. And I said, yes. And she said, don't tell anybody, because they'll put you on medication and think that you're crazy. So here this woman, now being heavily medicated for hallucinations, had the wherewithal to know the difference. And she was still seeing the beings coming to her because they weren't hallucinations. Mm-hmm. So, but the thing was, is that she had the wherewithal to know the difference of don't tell anybody, and so I told her, I said, well, I can see them. Yes. And so I said, but we'll have to keep this as our little secret. And so she agreed with me. So about a month later or so, I came on duty, and she was in an active decline. And I went to her room to check her blood pressure. And I walked in, and I stroked her arm, and I said to her, I said, Abigail, I said, it's Lynn. I'm here to check your blood pressure. And she'd kind of been rallying. Rallying is where they kind of go in and out, where there are periods of time where they're hard to rouse, but yet they're still breathing. Their eyes are sometimes half masked, and their toes are kind of flaccid. Then all of a sudden you'll see them perk, and their eyes come open, and they're bright because they're coming in and out, testing both sides, which is also when they come back with some great stories, if you ask. And so she did that, and she said to me, she said, I am so happy that I got to see you one more time. My parents are coming for me tomorrow, and I'm going home. Aww. I knew what that meant. Mm-hmm. And I said to her, I thank you so very much, for letting me be part of your healthcare team. It's been a pleasure to have gotten to know you. And she says, oh, well, we're going to see each other again. She says, we will see each other again. She says, and I want to tell you something, and this brings tears to my eyes. She said, you are very much loved on the other side, and you need to keep doing what you're doing for people. And I just, I'm still taken back by that. And I told her, I said, you precious lady, I said, you know, I gave her a kiss on her cheek, and I said to her, I said, thank you so much for, you know, bringing your beautiful energy into my life. And that was the last time that she spoke. She rallied throughout the night, but she wasn't coherent again with words at all. And she ended up passing the next day at around 10 o'clock at night. And the thing was, is I was off that night. It was a Monday, and I could hear her saying, I made it home. So when I remember looking at the clock, because I looked, and it was around 10 o'clock, and they said that she stopped breathing at around 10:30, which of course she left a little bit early. And I know this because, like, when my sister recently passed away in June, I saw her leave her body about 30 or 45 minutes early. I've seen patients leave a whole day before, and then they just leave the physical body there to finish. And yes, they can still hear you talking because they're probably standing next to you. So, but they're not necessarily in the body anymore. Death is not painful, people. It is not painful. You are taken out of your body before you experience that kind of thing, just so that you know, the cramping in the legs sometimes that are caused by dehydration and things like that. You don't go through that. You are taken out of that. If for some reason you want to stay in until the last minute, you're still graced with some pain relief with that. You know, some people might have a little bit, but death itself is not painful. So with that being said, yeah, I mean, I've got so many other things that I would be happy to share to kind of bring this home for people. And if anybody, again, has got any questions, I'll be happy to answer what I know.
They're hearing your kittens.
I'm
So they
sorry.
want to know where the kittens were coming from.
Yeah, actually, I had a mother come to my porch area, and she had 6 little kittens with her, and it looked like she had a couple of them that were older from another cat's litter, and I ended up keeping those for 2 weeks, getting them fed, and took them to the Humane Society, which is a no-kill facility, to get, you know, so that they could adopt them out. But the day that I came home from doing that, I found in my recycling bin some newborn kittens, 4 of them, of which I have because the mother passed away. So after 5 days, she passed away, and so I went ahead and I brought the kittens in, and I've been bottle feeding them. So I'm sorry, they just want to be held all the time because I'm mama.
Yeah.
So, but they're sweet, and I'm sorry that they're doing that. My daughter is going to be coming home in about an hour, and she'll take over mommy duty for me, so you won't be hearing them do that.
They're not distracting or anything. They just brought up in chat that they heard them. They thought maybe Jane had cats, because once in a while we'll have our cats on the back of our chairs, but it's not us this time.
Yeah, no.
Don't be sorry. They're babies.
Oh, and they're precious. They're so precious.
You had mentioned a pack between you and your mother, and you wanted to go into that a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. You know, the thing is my mother and I had an agreement before she passed away. I said to her, I said, you know, Mom, sometimes life is so stressful. And, you know, and if you're there, I really want to know that you're there and that it's not just my imagination, but I'm just not making it up to make myself feel better. So we agreed that my mother had long hair like mine, but hers was wavy, and it was this gorgeous pearlescent white hair, and it was very long, and that she would leave her hairs. And the day that she passed away, I drew a bath. Actually, it was on the day of her funeral. I drew a bath with bubbles to kind of soak in. And when I came back in, there was one of her long hairs laying on top of the bubbles to let me know that she was in fact there. And even this past Thanksgiving, on one of the dining room chairs. Now, I've moved twice since my mother passed away. I don't have the same car, nothing of hers. You know what I'm saying? So I find this beautiful long pearlescent hair laying across one of the chairs at the dining room table that we were going to be eating at. So we kind of left that one open for her. But what here? Come here, you. This is who's making the ruckus.
Oh, look at that.
Little fuzzy
baby.
You're okay, sweetie. You've already been fed. You just need to go play. But anyway, and also another thing too, and you can make pacts with them, even if they've already passed over. They can hear you talking, and you pick one specific thing that is either hairs or cards or feathers or things that are easy for them to move. A lot of times they show up as dragonflies. I know my sister shows up as a dragonfly with my other sister, and the green one is my sister that just passed, and the blue one is my younger sister, because one had green eyes and one had blue, and they flitz around together. They travel with dragonflies. So if you see dragonflies after somebody's passed away, I would bet that it is somebody that that is recently passed in your family. But you can ask them to leave things for you. Even if you pick something like a ladybug, all of a sudden you'll notice that there's a ladybug in the middle of winter on your, walking on your windowsill, or you'll go and or you'll go to the store and you'll be like, oh, well, look at that adorable person. It's got a ladybug on it. Or they open a magazine. I'm sorry. Hold on one second.
It's okay.
That's all right. We get quite a few dragonflies show up all at once. They'll be like almost like 80 to 100 of them invade our backyard every once in a while.
Well, I think that because of Jane and her abilities and her gifts, that she has a lot of fae and elementals that are attracted over there, and they bring those too. So that I'm not surprised that you have that kind of activity at your house. So, and bear with me one.
We know what it's like when our dog starts barking.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My daughter just walked in, and I apologize for that, to have her take over. But so you can do this to ask them and pick that one thing, and know that, like, if you're looking at a magazine and you turn the page and there's a picture of a ladybug or a documentary about ladybugs come on, these are all things having them let you know that they're there. You see a ladybug sticker. It doesn't have to be something real. You know what I mean? It can be anything like that. But my mother and we chose her hairs. My sister, Lisa, leaves feathers. She had a bird aviary of all kinds of feathers. So when she leaves feathers, they're not just like blue jay and robin and cardinal feathers. They're feathers from cockatiels and from conjures and from African grays. And she had those big, beautiful tropical looking ones as well that had gorgeous, vibrant yellow and blue. She'll leave feathers like that. So I know specifically that it's her. And there was one, for instance, too, that really brings it home for me with my mother. I had gone back to school to further my degree as a nurse, and I had gone to the school bookstore. I was picking up a binder, 3-ring binder, to put this packet of loose leaf papers in that I was also purchasing that day for the class that I was going to. And there were 50 colors. There were thousands of binders to pick through, and I just pick up this one. I'm like, oh, I'll take this one. I like this color. And didn't open it. Nothing. Went and paid for it. Had them put it in the bag. They put the packet of loose leaf papers in there as well. And I went straight from the school to my car, from my car to my classroom. And I'm sitting at my desk. And this particular day, I was in my psych class, and we were being tested that day. And I did not feel prepared for the test, because the tests were really, really hard. And so I was fretting, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I go to open my 3-ring binder to put the loose leaf papers in, and in that center ring, looped over and over, because my mother's hair was long, was one of my mother's hairs in the teeth of that 3-ring binder.
Wow.
Now, there is no way. I mean, there's no way that it was a fluke. I mean, it was purposely placed there by her. And even if it wasn't, it still brought a lot of comfort to me. But how can that happen? You know what I mean? Here it was, over and over looped. It was a long one. It was the same color. It was wavy like hers. And it brought me such great comfort at that time, because I realized that she was with me as my cheerleader, like she always was when she was alive, to let me know that everything was going to be okay. And it was. I made a C+ on the test. I was good with that. So, at least I passed it, because a C+ had to be like an 80, because their grading scale was so advanced. But so you can do this to make sure, those moments that you're so preoccupied, or that you're questioning, and they are there for every wedding, every graduation, they're playing with your babies before they even come down here. So when you say, oh, I wish that mom or dad were here, I wish that so-and-so was here, they are there. As a matter of fact, if you got empty seats and you have the ability to see spirits, you don't have empty seats because there's usually a spirit sitting in that seat.
Oh,
And they don't sit on top of people. They like their own seats. And if the seats are used up, they kind of do a bleachering effect towards the back of the room where they're sitting and these things kind of peering over. But of course, they're on the low, but we call it the high because they're up high because they don't want to take away from, the beautiful wedding and having everybody turning around looking at the spirits in the room instead of focusing on the bride. You know what I mean?
Right.
So they do have discretion with that sort of thing. And they have wonderful sense of humor too. They're very, very funny a lot of times. But also I've had patients, oh gosh, there was one with Alzheimer's. So many people wonder about patients with Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
I had been working at the facility that I was at for a full 10 years. And at this point, I had been working there for about 7 years. And 3 of those years, there was this lady named Shirley. And I remember her when she was up walking around. She was actually a volunteer that would come and bring books from the library there because they had a library there that was down to see if people wanted to check out the books that couldn't get out of their rooms to go and do it as easily. So she would volunteer and bring them down, or she'd bring little cookie treats and stuff for other people. And she had now at this point the advanced Alzheimer's. So for 3 years she had been on my unit and had not spoken one word, not one single word for 3 years. And I see her. I'm on duty. I'm at the nurse's station. I see her tooling down the hallway in her wheelchair with her feet, propelling it with her feet going down. And she parks in front of the nurse's station and she's facing the opposite hallway. We had the east hallway and the west hallway. And the nurse's station was in the middle that divided the two. I was a nurse in the east hallway, but she was focusing on the west hallway. In that very first room on the right was a woman that was actively passing. She was in the state of transition. She literally died within 2 hours of the time of what I'm going to share with you that happened. So all of a sudden, I'm in the nurse's station. I'm checking doctor's orders to see what's new before I start my med pass and pulling some charts and looking at some things. And all of a sudden, I hear, and I'm the only one at the nurse's station right at this moment, "Take me home, please, please take me home."
Oh.
And I come out of the nurse's station and I'm looking down the hallways to see who's hollering. And I just assumed that whoever it was, that one of the CNAs or another nurse may have connected with them and assisted them, and they went off into a room and there sits Sally. So I just assumed that the person was taken care of. So I turn around to go back into the nurse's station and I hear again, take me home, please, please take me home." And I turn around and it's Sally. I haven't heard her voice in 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And she's calling out saying, "Please, please take me home." So I walked over to her and I stroked her arm and I said, "Miss Shirley," Miss Sally. Wait a minute. I call her Shirley in my book, so we'll just do that. I'm sorry. I kind of shouldn't have said that other one. I said to her, I said, "Miss Shirley," I said, who are you calling for to take you home?" And she says, she points and she says, "Look at the angels. Aren't they beautiful?"
Oh.
She's pointing in the direction of this woman's room that is actively transitioning. And of course, I looked down the hallway at first and didn't see anything, but then I looked again. And kind of shifted with that second sight. And I could see this woman's loved ones and these beautiful angels and beings. They were bulging out into the hallway through the wall, coming in to collect this woman. And that is what Shirley was seeing. And of course, Shirley herself passed away about 3 months later also.
Wow.
But the thing is the fact that she was acknowledging them. She knew what she was seeing. She was calling out to them. And even though she hadn't spoken, and then again, she didn't speak after that. She hadn't spoken in 3 years. She spoke that, take me home, and pointed out the angels. And then she didn't speak again. But the thing is it's just that they do see these angels and these loved ones coming in. I was in a patient's room with a lady that was actively passing, and her niece came in that I call April in my book. And I hear my patient say to her, "April, when are you going to have those 2 baby girls? I want to see those 2 baby girls before I go home to Jesus. And April tells her, I mean, I'm listening to this conversation. April tells her, she says, well, Aunt so-and-so, she said, I can't have children. She said, I've been trying for 25 years to have children, and I'm now in menopause, almost completing menopause. And she was like in her 40s, like in her middle 40s. And she said, I can't have children. And my patient insisted. And she said, oh yes, these are you're holding one. I see you holding one in each arm. She said they have blonde ringlet hair, chocolate brown eyes and dimples, and they look just like you. Is what she said. And she was insistent. She was almost upset that the niece was not. And so the niece came back and could see, I mean, the lady's face was actually flushing. And she said, well, that's a nice thought, but I don't have any children. You know, that's a very nice thought. I would love that, but I don't have any children. So the lady passes away. So over a period of about a year and a half, I have April's uncle come through, who was there for hip surgery and had to be there for a little while. Then her own father came through, and he actually passed away there. So I had multiple times over a year and a half period to see this woman. And 6 months after her aunt died, she comes walking in and she's got a baby bump.
Oh.
And I could not help it. I'm like, what you got in there? And she said, I have identical twin girls. She was pregnant. She said that she was pregnant at the time that her aunt passed, but she was so early pregnant that she didn't know it. And so she was pregnant. So about 6 more months after that, she's had the babies. And I actually even got to see them at one point where they were just toddling. And they were going down the hallway following her, and one in each hand of their mom, and they were just toddling. And they had these little blonde bobbity curls that were blonde. They had brown eyes, and they looked just like the mom. You know, so everything that the woman had described was true about these children coming in. I had another lady that was she was actually in her 50s, yes, when she had her child. But her mother was saying to her, there's a little boy in here calling me grandma. And the lady, I don't remember what I call her in the book. I'm just going to say Phyllis for now, because that's my mom's name. But so Phyllis says to her mom, she said, well, I'm an only child, and I've never been married, and I don't have a boyfriend, and I'm almost finishing menopause. So I don't know why you'd have a child calling you grandma. And again, she insisted. She said, no, this little boy, he looks to be about 7 years old. He's got brown hair and he looks a lot like you. She said, and he's calling me grandma. And she says, well, I don't know. That's not possible. I don't know. And she looks at me. She's like, Mom's having one of her spells. You know, and I'm kind of giggling. I'm kind of giggling because I know that she's in this state of transition. So Phyllis goes to the area where we have the little snack machines to go and get something to drink for herself. And there was a gentleman there whose wife had just passed away. He was there waiting for his children to arrive. They were coming from the airport and didn't make it in time. And she simply introduced herself. They started talking. They exchanged telephone numbers. And they kind of supported each other through their grief for almost a year. And then he finally got up the nerve to ask her out.
Oh.
They dated for 6 months. It was hot and heavy, and they got married. Well, and she at that time, I mean, she was like 50 or 51 years old when she got married, and she started thinking that she had and how I know this is because I ran into her in the grocery store, and she had the little boy with her, and this was like years later. But the thing was that she was telling me how she thought she had mono or something. And so she went to the doctor expecting to be treated for something. And he's like, oh, well, just in case, let's do a pregnancy test. And she's like, I haven't been regular in years and da-da-da-da-da. And lo and behold, she was pregnant. Not only was she pregnant, she was a little bit along in that pregnancy. So she ended up having a healthy little boy. And when I saw her with him, he was probably like 2 or 3 years old. He had that cute little twang to his voice. And I ran into her and I'm like, I'm like, oh, what a beautiful little boy. And she says, he's mine. I had him. And then she told me the story about how the guy that she had met in the facility in the break room, and that they ended up getting married, and that she didn't know she could get pregnant, and here's what she got.
Wow.
So, so they come back with some very, very beautiful, stories sometimes, and things to share with loved ones that can, to comfort them. We do not die. They're not afraid of death. They also can be 6 places simultaneously with you, because we're all part of a collective consciousness. And when we come from heaven or source or whatever you want to call it, it's kind of like something explode, like a little seed explodes, and it makes like 6 of us at one time that all go into different lifetimes. So we have paralleling lifetimes going on. And that's why sometimes when people have dreams that are so vivid that it's like, it was almost like I was there. I was a fighter pilot in a jet in a war, and it was really like I was there. Well, you very well could have been there. You might be that in another galaxy somewhere else, paralleling these lifetimes. So, and we all return to the, into a collective consciousness. But so yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've got many, many more things that I would be happy to share. If you want me to, or even I'd be happy to answer some questions for anybody. If anybody too is interested, the book is called The Colors of Heaven, Beginnings Never End. It is on Amazon. It is also on my site. However, on my site, it's a little bit cheaper, and I can autograph it for you. And yes, it does come directly from me. So if you want to have it signed, then they need to order it through my website. If you want to, if you live out of the country, Australia or any place like that, I recommend that you order it from Amazon, because they're going to do your free shipping thing. So and the shipping from where I live to New Zealand is like $45 for one book. So it's insane. So please get it through. If you are in any of those other countries listening, please get it from Amazon. But if you're in the USA, please reach out to me, and I'll be happy to send it to you. My website is www.lynnmonet. That's lynnmonet.com. And you can reach me through there, as well as order the books from there. Some of the books on my website are not on Amazon. I'm kind of trying to shift away a little bit, putting certain ones out on Amazon, but not all of them, because Amazon kind of, they like money, and they don't pay, their authors don't get very much for that. So, and it's not about the money, it's about getting the information out there. But I don't think that the guy, what's his name, that owns Amazon needs to be wealthier than he already is. So if you would like to have them come from me, I'll be happy to sign them for you.
Is that Bezo? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. He doesn't need any more money.
I think his ex-wife gets most of it.
Well, if I had to be married, she probably deserves it. So you never know. I mean, he uses $100 bills for toilet paper. I mean, I use $100 bills for groceries. You know what I'm saying? So,
right.
So if you want to, and again, it's not about the money. It's about getting the word out there to help people. This is a beautiful, beautiful book for anybody that has lost someone, or somebody that's maybe been diagnosed recently with terminal illness, to kind of take that stigma of death and dying away. As with all of my books, I do a self-help section in the back, and this one also has the self-help section. It walks you through everything from creating a will without an attorney, so that all you have to do is pay the fee to have it notarized and make it legal. It talks about making sure how your names are worded if you have a joint checking account with a loved one, to have it or instead of and, because they will shut your account down with the and word instead of or, and then you won't have access to that checking account after someone has passed. It also walks people through the difference between a power of attorney and healthcare power of attorney, and what that means, how to also set up your healthcare power of attorney there's a 5 wishes packet that you can print off online and do it yourself. And it actually is a nice packet, 5 wishes. because it walks you through things. It'll even ask if you want music playing, or if there's a special note that you want to leave for a loved one, or if there's somebody that you don't want there breathing in your face with garlic breath when you can't say anything. You can also request that that person not be there. But it walks you through in a very, very easy to read way how to do it. And then once you complete that, you have it notarized, and it is considered a legal document in the court of law. So it also, it talks about too, so many times people, they're diagnosed with a terminal illness. And I, as a nurse going into people's home and also doing care management for a large insurance company that I did for many, many years, where I would go into the homes, people, they get these diagnoses and they curl up in the bed in the fetal position and wait for death to come. And it's like, hey, wait a minute. Why are you doing that? If you get that sort of a diagnosis, it's time to get your things in order. So if you have a loved one and you need the roof repaired on your house, and you know that your loved one's not going to be able to handle that, then you take care of it. You make sure the car's got good tires on it. If your wife, your husband doesn't know, how to balance a checkbook, maybe they're from another country, you make sure that they know where all of the insurance papers are and who to contact, and who, leave a list with names and phone numbers of people that they're supposed to call, to help guide them through this period of time, so that they know to get that $250 Social Security one-time payment if you're a spouse. Most people don't even know about that. So this is very, very detailed about all of those things. It also talks about end-of-life directives, the ability of being cremated for under $1,000 versus buried. So many times I would go into patients' homes and I would see people that couldn't even afford their medication, but yet they're still making their payment to the funeral home because of the funeral that they had for mama. And they've been paying that bill for over 2 years. And I'm like, why are you paying that? Because mama would have wanted it that way. And it's like, well, actually, where she is, she could care less about money. And she'd really rather have you keep your money and pay for your medication to make your life easier, and to keep the money than for you to be paying for that. It's like, I'm not telling you not to pay your bills, but your insulin's more important than your mom who's been gone for 2 years. Type thing. And another thing is too, it also talks about some very, very important things that people don't realize. When you go with someone to a hospital, even if it's your spouse, never, ever, ever sign for anyone but yourself in the hospital. The power of attorney does not go into play legally until the person who has that power of attorney, the person that they're covering for, has to be able to not be able to speak for themselves. They have to be not of sound mind and unable to speak for themselves, or that's just a piece of paper that means nothing until that time happens. The thing about the hospitals is you'll have this little lady with her clickety shoes come in, and she'll say, oh, here, I need you to sign this. And immediately the wife will say, well, I'm the POA, or the husband will say, I'm the POA, I'll sign. And their loved ones over there getting ready for a test, putting on their shoes. I have a friend of mine who, and I tell this to really hit this home. Her husband went in for a test. He had kidney stones, and he had to go in to have that dye put in to kind of see what kind of stones they were and where they were located in the kidney or the ureters. And I'm on the phone with her. And the lady comes in and she says, here, I've got your admission papers to sign. And immediately my friend says, oh, well, I'll sign them. I'm his POA. The lady handed them to her and she signed them. And the thing is it doesn't matter if it's the stinking mailman standing next to you. Whoever's willing to sign is going to get the bill. And I don't care what the hospitals say. Oh, no, that won't happen. Yes, it does. So just to cover yourself. So I said to her, I said, why are you signing those papers? And she said, oh, well, because I'm the POA. I said, no, you're not. I said, that POA, I can hear your husband talking in the background. He's reciting his birth date and everything. He is alert and oriented and able to speak for himself. It was illegal for them to even try to hand you that document. They shouldn't have even questioned it. They should have gone straight to him and said, ma'am, I'm sorry, but you're his POA only if he is unable to speak for himself.
Right.
So I told her, I said, you need to go back to that lady and you need to have her shred those documents in front of you that you signed, and you tell her that you're doing her a favor, because by her having you sign those papers is illegal, and that those papers need to be brought back in and handed to your husband to have them signed. Lo and behold, he had an allergic reaction that caused death. He had an allergic reaction to the chemicals that they were using in the test. He was left on life support for 2 weeks. I mean, there was so much expense with this whole thing, and then he ended up passing. And here she was living in, I mean, these people, they were like in their late 40s, and here they are living in a 2-income home. They both were actively working. They still had kids that were getting ready to graduate from high school and go off to college. So they had all of that expense, 2 cars, 3 kids, a dog, you know what I'm saying? All of this stuff. And she's like, what am I going to do? I have these hospital bills that are coming in that even with the deductible, I mean, they're tens of thousands of dollars, because those when they put you on that life support, you're looking at anywhere of $100,000 to $200,000 a day, just for the life support. So she's getting these bills of her 20% or her 50% or whatever it was. And she's like, I can't pay these. And I said to her, I said, well, I'm going to give you a little tip. I said, and people, you need to check this in your state, but I'm almost certain that I'm right. And I know that I'm right in the state of Florida, in the state of South Carolina, and North Carolina, that because I've spoken to attorneys about this, and Louisiana. If you have not signed anything, you are not responsible to pay those bills. And so when my friend went to her attorney, he asked her, he said, well, did you sign anything for your husband? And she said, well, I did, but then my friend made me go back and have the papers destroyed. He said, well, your friend is a good friend because she just saved you tens of thousands to $100,000 that you would have gotten stuck paying and been responsible for if she had not intervened. Wow. And he said, now this is what's going to happen. And people, I'm not telling you not to pay your bills. You make your own choice about this. I'm just telling you this so that you don't make this mistake. What's going to happen is you're going to get a bill in 30 days. Then you're going to get a bill in 60 days. Then you're going to get a threatening bill in 90 days. Then you're going to get a nasty letter in 120 days from collections. And it's going to ruin your husband's credit. But your husband's dead. So it didn't matter that it didn't. And again, I'm not telling you not to pay your bill. If you want to pay that $100,000, have at it, honey. But I'm just saying to you, the people that are left behind are the ones that need that money. And it's one thing to have somebody pass away and you're left with all of these bills that were a 2-income family to have to pay all of that other stuff too. I can assure you, your family member does not want you to get stuck with something like that. Right. So never, ever, ever, unless you have children that are under 18, yes, you sign for those, but I don't care who it is. Even if you go in and the person's puking, you pull that bucket away from them and hand them a pen and wish for the best. You don't just go ahead to be nice and sign, not for your husband, not for your wife, because you're protecting them from anything that could happen that's unforeseen in the hospital. You just don't know. Mistakes are made every day and you could end up dead and then they're end up stuck. So to protect your spouse, unless you got a spouse you don't like and you want to stick them with the bill. No, I'm done. I'm only joking about that. No. But I'm just saying, go in and be informed. Do not sign for anybody but yourself, and do not let anyone sign for you except yourself to protect them. So please, be aware of that. But all of these things are in the back of the book that are in the last chapter that walk you through all of the things. And it's kind of even like a checklist kind of thing, like, notify this and notify that. And people, don't forget, if you're a spouse and your husband or your wife collected more Social Security than you move up into that bracket because you're married to them. So you then take on what they were getting paid, which is more than what you were getting paid. And a lot of people don't realize that either. So there are so many things in there that explain things to save you money, to have you do a will without an attorney that makes it legal. And it's really, really important for everybody to have their end of life directives in place, because of the reason being, it makes it a lot easier for your family. My sister recently passed away in June, and she had none. She was in her early 60s. She went into the hospital with sepsis, and they ended up putting 70 pounds of fluid on her in a week and shut her heart off. So she died of fluid overload. And then they had the nerve to put down that she died of breast and ovarian cancer on her death certificate, and she didn't even have ovaries or breasts.
Wow.
So, and because she had pockets from the sepsis on her chest that were welting, she thought that the cancer had come back. They actually biopsied them and had the biopsy come back negative for breast cancer. And that's what they put on her death certificate.
Wow.
So, you
Forrest friend would like to know what the name
have
of
an
the book
advocate.
is again.
Yeah. The name of the book is The Colors of Heaven, Beginnings Never End. And you can get it on my website, www.lynnmonet.com. And I'll be happy to hear from you if you want it. But I mean, it walks you through all of these things that you just don't think of at the time. You're under so much duress, and especially if it's a sudden death and it's totally unexpected. One that's natural and expected is hard enough to deal with. But when it's unexpected, you're in a fog. You need somebody to think for you. So if you know all of this information ahead, it makes it easier for you to navigate through being taken advantage of. And they will take advantage. I mean, there are two things for sure in life. That's death and income taxes. So anybody in either of those two businesses are just raking it in. And it doesn't have to be that way. Also, something about cremation, if I may mention this as well. My sister, I had her cremated, which she wanted to be cremated. And I know some people want to be buried. It's no problem. But if you do choose cremation, one thing that I did notice is when my sister was cremated, she wanted to have her ashes taken to the beach that we grew up on as kids and to have her ashes released into the water. And as I was carrying the urn close to me, I could feel her essence, but it was all of the gunk that was left behind. All of the stuff that you don't take with you to heaven, the sadness, the pain, the sickness, any jealousy issues, any unresolved issues are left with your body when you leave. And even though they're cremated, it has, again, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just is changed, into a different shape. So you can feel that energy radiating off of those. And the thing is it was so strong that I had to tell Bill, my partner, that we needed to go back to the hotel that we were staying in because I couldn't stand to carry her ashes that close. So I had them wrapped in a towel, hugging them, so it wouldn't be obvious that I'm carrying somebody's ashes down to the beach. So I told him, I said, I can't stand I'm overwhelmed. Yes, it is familiar, but it's all the yucky stuff, left behind. She took all of her joy and love and everything with her, and this is the leftovers. So what we ended up having to do is we went and we got a pail from Walmart, and I put the ashes in the pail and I put a paper towel over it so that they wouldn't blow. And I literally took them to the ocean, carrying it away from me, stepped into the water about waist deep and submerged the pail so that they wouldn't blow all over. And as they came out, they literally circled around me and went out to the ocean. It was beautiful. She made her one last lap and she went, and her wishes were taken care of. But the reason why I mentioned that is so many people want to wear a pendant with their loved one's ashes, and because it makes them feel close to them. And yes, their essence is in there, but there's a lot of negative stuff in there too. So, if you start to wear it and you feel the grief is harder to get through, or you're feeling more sad or depressed with having it on, you may want to not wear that. If you need something of them left behind with you, before they stop breathing, get a little piece of their hair. That still has all of the components in it of the love and the joy. And there's the anger and stuff in there too, but it's everything that makes them up as a person, human being. And you take that little snippet before they stop breathing so that all of that good energy, that balanced energy is in there, and you're not getting stuck with the leftovers. Right. So, and I'm just mentioning that because I know people do that a lot, and I'm not trying to tell you not to do it, but just beware that if you notice how you're feeling when you are wearing it, if it does change if you're finding that you're more depressed, or you're finding that you're taking on even some of the energetic traits of your sibling that you didn't like so much, you're more grumpy, or a bitchy, or whatever it is, and that's not normally your forte. I wanted to mention this too, and I know that we're getting close to time, when I was talking about the heart and the fact that it's being found now that the heart has about 50,000 times more memory than the brain. Did I mention this on your show once before?
I don't think so.
I think we touched on it a little bit, but we didn't get into it very much.
Okay. And people, you can Google this. It's online. It did happen. There was a little girl that needed a heart transplant, and she was about 11, 12 years old. There was another little girl that was violently murdered and assaulted, that died, and her parents decided to allow her heart to be donated, for her to be an organ donor. So the heart came to this other little 11, 12-year-old girl that needed the heart. And after about 6 months after the surgery, she started to have night terrors of things that she didn't recognize. And within 2 years of the time that she had that transplant done, the girl that received the heart was able to identify the murderer of the little girl that was killed, who they had no idea who did it.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I'm telling you, look it up, people. I'm not making this up. It is on there. She was able to identify the murderer. So it really, really goes to show that when you do have an organ transplant, you might notice that you're eating things that you didn't normally like, or all of a sudden you don't like something because those cells are still in that organ. And so you do filter in a piece of the other person as well. And in the case of the heart, isn't that amazing? The memory in there. And even though it was traumatic, she was able, the man was caught and arrested because of what the girl was able to do. So, a lot of times when you're angry or when you're driving in traffic, get out of your head and let it drop down into your heart. That's kind of where we're going with these new planetary changes. And bring them over here. I want everybody to see if they've been asking about the kitties. Here, go ahead. Here they are. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, yeah.
There they are. So anyway, and there's one more little black one, but he's kind of not doing so well. But anyway, that's okay. Just let him be. That's okay. He might poop on you, so just let him be. Anyway, but I'm just saying, people, it doesn't realize we're going into this time where we're even going to have additional senses, where it's going to be additional senses added on, and we're going to be thinking more with our hearts, so that when we come forward to someone, we can almost feel what they're feeling. So our response is going to be different. It's so easy to be nasty to somebody when you don't realize how much you've really hurt them, or, what happened to make their day the way that it was, that they caused the situation that pissed you off. You know what I'm saying? So we will be looking at people differently, and this will also elevate the consciousness. And thank you, all of you light bearers and light anchors, for being here. And those of us that will be going to be the bridges between the anchors and the light, coming very soon here. We're going to have, soon, I'd say before 2030, maybe even a lot sooner than that, that some things are going to be changing. And again, the earth is going to be of a higher elevation, higher consciousness, and the people that do reincarnate won't be coming back here. They'll be going back somewhere else where they can be in a place like we're in now. So, and I'll be happy not to have to do that. So anyway, so yeah.
All right. That was great.
That's awesome.
Well, we'll just go ahead and stop here. And we talked about your books and your website and stuff. Do you have any conferences coming up?
Gaia came out 2 months ago. I did a show with Gaia with George Norrie on Beyond Belief. So that has come out. I've got a show coming up on Tuesday in Africa on Aquarius Rising with Chantel and Isa.
She's good.
Yeah, she is excellent. I actually have a show tonight with Cisco after this. And I've got a couple of other things coming up as well. I have a show coming up October 1st in Australia with Harvest Hope. I'll be on that show. And I've got a couple of events that I'm going to be going to in Virginia, and they're going to be selling tickets for one in Pennsylvania coming up around November. So, I'm busy girl. So, but feel free to reach out. I still answer my own emails. It may take me a while to get to them, but it is me answering them and responding to them. People, if you do, reach out to me if you have questions. Also, I mentioned the mental illness thing. That's actually in my second book of the Omnipresent series. And I've got 2 more books coming out before year's end.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
wow, how do you do it all?
I don't know.
well, one has been finished for almost a year and a half, and I've had some trouble finding an editor to do them, but now I have 2 editors. So I have one editing the book that's been waiting that should have been out last year, and then I'm currently writing one. The Omnipresent is going to be a series of 5 books. 1 and 2 is out. 3 is in editing, going to be coming out hopefully around Halloween time, and then around December, the Omnipresent Gnome Place Like Home, which is the one that I'm writing about now, about my sister's house that I inherited that is enchanted, that we've talked about before, that has a resident fae on the property.
Elemental.
Yes, and he's turned out to be an asset to the family. Let's put it that way.
Wow.
He loves beignets. You keep him happy, and they can do amazing things. So I feel very honored to be able to have that. But we have that enchanted property, and that's what that story's about. Colors of Heaven is not in that series. I am going to be doing a sequel to Colors of Heaven after I finish these other 2 books, with my sister's death and some of the things that I saw happening with that as well that were very, very interesting, and to share with people to bring more of a light of what happens at that time of transitioning. And then I have that book, The Gap, out, which is a book that 2 professionals asked me to write. I had a late life baby at 46. I have a 15-year-old at home. And I was looking for a book for her that was something beyond the birds and the bees and human trafficking, because there's like that gap there. So I wrote, we couldn't find one for her. And these 2 counselors said, hey, well, you're an author. Why don't you write something? And I'm like, well, you're going to have to be my wingman. I will write it, but I want to make sure that it's approved by somebody in your position. And so I wrote the book. I mean, it's everything from talking about not wearing stinky sneakers out on your first date, because no matter how beautiful or handsome you are, being in a closed car in the rain with the windows up and with somebody with smelly shoes is not attractive. Also to stay off your phone on a date. You go and you see kids these days, they're sitting in a booth and both of them are on their phone and they're not engaging or talking. However, if you're not talking, you can open it up to play music, because music is a good conversation starter, as long as it's just one of you doing that. It also talks about things like what to do if a condom breaks. And it's not that I'm encouraging your children to have sex, but if they are having sex, they need to know what to do if the condom does come off or break, to protect their future. And there are things that they can do immediately after. There's a morning after pill that is not an abortion pill. It simply stops the ovulation. They can get it over the counter in the drugstore. They can be 3 years old and get it if they've got $70, and no questions asked. They will even give it to a 3-year-old. So you can get those sorts of things if those kinds of things happen. It is written gender neutral, because this new era that we're going into, it was hard to write that because Microsoft wasn't ready for it and kept correcting me. So a lot of the names, like Jordan, could be male or female, so that these kids can read it and understand. It also has pictures in it. There are no graphic pictures of private parts, people. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that. But there are pictures of, like, for instance, if you are abducted and you're put into a trunk, I tell about how to get from a back seat into a trunk, how to get from a trunk into a back seat, and also where I have pictures of the lever and the buttons that are inside of the trunk that are release buttons to know what to look for. I also tell them about a crowbar and where to find it. I mean, if you can't find a way to get out of the trunk, at least if you got a crowbar to whack somebody in the head with when they open it and you start running, then at least you'll know, where it is, how to knock out the back tail lights. But it gives a lot of good common sense things, like how to clean out a refrigerator. In the self-help section, kids today, they've got dishwashers. If the dishwasher breaks, they look at the dish and wait for it to wash itself, and it's like, no, this is how you wash it. You wash the front and the back, because if the back's dirty and sits on a clean front, you're going to get food poisoning, and you want to make sure they're dry so you don't get mold before you put them away. but it talks about everything, including cleaning out a refrigerator. And don't use Windex, use vinegar because you'll poison your food. And make sure that you turn it back on when you're done. So,
Right.
so you don't get rotted food. But a lot of these things that are useful that, lives are busy, that people just don't get around to even, mentioning. And it's broken down. It's broken down also in setting good boundaries, choosing good friends. The boundaries with people that age, they want to not offend anyone because they don't want to be the outcast of the group. So it specifically tells them what to say and how to set the boundaries and still save face. Joe comes up to you, he's borrowed $50 from you and never paid you back, and now he wants to borrow another 20, and you're afraid to say no. But what you can say is I really wish that I could give you that $20, but is there any other way that I can help you? I can help you in any other way, but I just can't, the $20 is not available.
Right.
Period. So you're setting that boundary that you're not giving the person any more money, but you're saving face by at least offering an alternative, of which they'll probably turn you down for because they want the money. But then you save face, and you don't have to worry about having that rebuttal or whatever, a better word, that you know what I'm saying, to come back at you, type things, because kids are petty. They really are. I mean, until they get older and get some maturity on them, they can be pretty, they can be mean, they can bully people. So you don't want to be that person.
All right. That's all good stuff. Yeah. But make sure you guys get that book, and especially if you had kids, or make sure your kids, when they become adults or young adults, get that book for them.
Yeah. And I recommend that parents read the book first to make sure that it's appropriate for your child, because it is not candy coated, people. It is very straightforward. I'm sorry, I'm a nurse. It is straightforward. I was a urology nurse for almost 4 years. So yeah, I come out and I just say it like it is. It is not candy coated. You may not want your child to read it, but I can tell you what, if you read it, you're going to learn some things too. So, really. And so let me know what you think.
Nice.
That's awesome. Thank you, Clay.
Thank you,
Clay,
Clay.
put your website up
you.
there, and Lulu put Cisco's in the chat. So you'll be on Cisco's journey through the gate.
Yeah, I think I think that I'm checking with her, because I know she wasn't feeling well last week. So I'm supposed to be on there tonight, but I don't know if maybe she's changed. I'm waiting to hear back from her. I haven't checked, but check over there just in case, because I think I am supposed to be on there tonight unless something changes. So yeah.
Very good.
But if not, I'm on there the last Sunday of every month. So that's a solid date.
All right. Nice.
All right. And we'll throw you some dates to get you back on also.
I would love that. Thank you so very much for having me. It's always a pleasure. You both are the host and the hostess with the mostest, and I enjoy talking to you, and you're so knowledgeable. And thank you, everybody, for coming. Again, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, to also the bell, the notification bell. That's important too. And and subscribe. That would be a nice thing. And don't forget to go to their store. They got some good stuff in their store. So go shopping. Christmas time is coming. So definitely go shop.
That's right. We got some fall stuff getting ready to be added at the store for sweatshirts and long sleeve, big heavy thermal stuff and hoodies. So be all ready for fall and winter.
There you go. There you go. Thank you so much for having me. I love everybody.
All right. Thank you, Lynn.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn.
It's my pleasure.
All right, everybody.
All right.
Just stay there, Lynn, and we'll just end the show. Thank you all for coming. We see a lot of familiar faces and some new ones that popped in tonight. So thank you all very much.
Yeah, I see that.
And be sure to check out our other shows coming up. We'll have them on our Midwest Night Watchers on Facebook. We have a group and a page that we always post what our shows are, and you'll find us. And make sure you check us out on Dennis Carroll's show, Hunting the Shadows, where I go on and we do a podcast called The Road Less Traveled. We talk about weird and mysterious things that people might not be talking about currently. So that's always a good subject to check out.
Ooh, I want to be on that show.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe we'll have to have you on.
Yeah.
Well, because we're always talking about weird stuff. But anyway.
So thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time. Love and peace. We love you all. And keep looking up. And Jane?
Keep your vibrations high.
That's right.
That's right. There you go.
All right. Love
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye.